poor thing. You must be frightened, aren't you? Look at all those things going on behind you. So this is an answer for Rosa Maria from Buenos Aires, who's asked us, what is an atypical phobia made of? Well, let's have a good look at what phobias are made of first of all. This is quite frightening, isn't it? Feels frightened, frightening situation. What's it made of? Well, we've got the insect phobia that everybody knows about. Everybody's heard of somebody who's been frightened of insects. We've got the fear of snakes, which is also pretty common. And then here we have an atypical phobia. This is a Garuda, it's from Indonesia, and it's a very interesting creature because it's mythological and it's made of different things. You can see the beak, you can see the legs, you can see the claws on this beautiful creature. It's quite frightening. And if you have a good look at it, you'll see it has power, and maybe it has to do with something that is very common in us. It's our fear of power. So what's happened here? From a psychoanalytical point of view, we have a displacement. So what are we seeing? We're seeing in this figure, it's made of lots of little bits of my imagination. It's really, that's what mythology is. It's my imagination in little bits put together. And it has to do with my aggression, it has to do with my wish for power, it has to do with my wish for freedom, it has to do with my anger and control and all of that. So I've put my phobia into this, and perhaps I'm frightened of Garudas. That could be a possibility. Or maybe if I've put my fear of penises into somewhere, it could be a snake. But then on the other hand, it could be that I'm just frightened of snakes. So let's see where all this psychological theory takes us to. From a psychoanalytical point of view, this could be happening in my mind. Therefore, I have a series of defense mechanisms to protect myself from unconceivable wishes, things that I don't like about myself or I don't want to know about myself. And there I would be doing things like making a Garuda, an atypical phobia. Now, on the other hand, let's look at the snake. It could be that I'm afraid of sex, and therefore I don't want to see snakes anywhere because I'm afraid of penises. That is a possibility from a psychoanalytical point of view. But we have to hear what Freud said about that. He said sometimes a pencil is only a pencil, and sometimes a snake is only a snake. We could also think that from a psychoanalytical point of view, this represents a vulva, and the hair of the vulva around it, and I could be afraid of this because a cockroach represents a vulva. Well, okay, these things do happen in the unconscious mind, but it's not happening all the time. There's another possibility. The possibility is that when I was a little girl, I was in my garden and I saw a snake and it scared me to death because it was slithery, it moved really quickly, out of control. And I was frightened that it would bite me, and it bit my dog and killed my dog in front of me, and therefore I am very sensibly afraid of snakes. This is what our behavioral theories would tell us, that you learn things and therefore it sticks in your mind, and to stop being afraid of it, you have to unlearn it. From the psychoanalytical point of view, you're afraid of things that sometimes represent something else. Discover what you're really afraid of and you'll be rid of your fear of snakes. Now, what else can happen? Now, we've learned something very interesting. Sometimes we're afraid of something totally inexplicable because we've never found a snake and we're afraid of snakes. We can't even say the word snake. Now, why is this so atypical? Because if I've never been in contact with it, how could I learn it? It's absolutely confusing. Well, we found out that if I teach a poor mouse to be afraid of a certain smell of flowers, and I associate that fear of flowers with a horrible experience, then I inseminate another mouse. So mummy mouse and daddy mouse have never met. They've never told each other anything, okay? And then they have more babies through the same method. The grandchildren of the original mouse are going to be afraid of that flower smell too. This proves that fear can go from one generation to the next through genes. Isn't that amazing? Fear not. Even if it's genetic, we can do something about it because our minds and our brains are extremely flexible and they can learn and unlearn even today, something that happened 3, 4, 5 generations ago. So perhaps if I decide and I realize that this has nothing to do with my present life, with my present experiences, maybe it has to do with my great-great-grandfather who was bitten by a snake, I can still unlearn to be afraid of this snake and I can still be in control of my life. So as you can see, The most important thing when you have a look at an atypical phobia or anything else in the human mind is, one, have a very respectful relationship as a therapist with your patient. Listen carefully. There is not one theory that explains all. All theories have a good moment in time and place for a different person and a different situation. But what any good therapist does is they listen very carefully, and they listen with respect, and they don't just put the person into a theory. You have to look at all the theories because they're all very valid and they all explain things from a different perspective. Let's hope that answered your question.